We are live, the November edition of the Hostaway Webinar Series. It's always one of our favorite times of the month, the Hostaway Webinar Series. We're still riding the high from Hostcella as well. Big shout out to everyone who made it, all the vendors and customers and partners who made it such a great success. So those of you who don't have a Hostcella t-shirt will be a little jealous, and I'm just okay with that. That's all the housekeeping. And I'd like to introduce my partner in crime. I guess I'd probably introduce myself. My name's Ben. I'm the content marketing manager here at Hostaway. And the special guest today is my good friend and colleague, Kyle Loveland. So Kyle, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me back, Ben. I'm glad I I made it on to round two here.
And I think everyone can appreciate that that you not only are you a Hostway employee, solutions engineer is your title, but you actually run your own short-term rental property business. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of the spiel on how you got into the business?
Yeah, so I mean I get it from the property manager side. I before coming to Hostaway, I have my own short-term rentals that I own and operate, as well as having done quite a bit of consulting for much larger property managers here. I'm based out of Cape May, New Jersey, so outside of Philly would be the nearest city. But it's a very seasonal market. Really competitive for short-term rentals, and I'm still in the trenches every day with that. I'm luckily able to work remotely from this blurry space, and we, I see day in and day out what other property managers are going through, and for myself too. So this is a topic that I'm excited to be on for. It's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, so I mean, give me the sort of elevator pitch of how you envision. Give me how AI is working for you today in your business, and then give me a little bit about, a little tease about what the next iteration is.
So right now I'm doing more than most, I would say, because I need to for my job at Hostaway as well. I need to understand the space. Solutions is in the title, and so there are many integrated partners that are current AI solutions out there. And so having an understanding of what each of them can do, their capabilities and their limitations is essential, and that's something I'll also be able to share with everybody today. But I've been testing out multiple of our integration partners. I run parallel testing occasionally between them, seeing where messages, how different models generate messages, and and again, just sort of understanding what that workflow looks like. It really helps when I'm in discussions with current and prospective customers.
Yeah, I really love that whenever you and I have a chat on this topic, you can show me the real, tangible, practical implication of AI. I think, for the first, let's say, 12 months of ChatGPT being a thing, everyone bought in. Everyone's bought in. Everyone knows, oh, I have to be using AI, but no one really knows how to do it, right? Or we're all still figuring it out. And so I think it's so valuable that you can come to the table and give some real life examples of how it works or how it doesn't work. And I think with that note, go ahead to the next slide, Assad. Kyle, why don't you tee this up? We're going to do a little bit of an exercise here. We're going to put a poll out. We're going to need your participation in this. So Kyle, why don't you go ahead and tee this up for us?
Sure. So I just want to use this to highlight an example of how different AI models can respond. But what we have here is a real Gust inquiry that I received a few months back. So the question, this was before they had reserved. This was just the first message. What things are shared? It says private hot tub and private backyard, but is the hot tub in the yard? Sorry, I know it sounds like a silly question, but you'd be amazed at the things you find on here. I'm looking for a place to go for a short little honeymoon after me and my wife to be get married in Tillman Island. And this looks lovely, and it's all her favorite color.
Okay. Okay. And so this is a pretty standard inquiry, and it's one that is a fairly understandable use case for AI. So then what was the next step when you got this inquiry? What was the next step?
So after I receive an inquiry, I have these different models that are able to generate a response that it doesn't go out automatically. It's been generated for my approval to send out. And what's really interesting is that you can see how they each approach the question. Now, I should say that these are are now slightly old models. It's crazy to say that since it's only been a couple of months. But the responses that an AI system can generate is linked to a lot of different factors, including how you've coached it in terms of its tonality, the way that it responds to questions, and then the listing knowledge that it has. What is it being trained on? Is it your listing description? Is it your guidebook, your amenities, even your past interactions with guests? So there's a lot of data. It depends on what an AI model considers for how it ends up responding. So it's always interesting to see what gets pulled through and how it deals with inquiries that might not have the perfect grammar, or it might be a bit of a run on. It might have multiple questions built in. This is where it's more challenging than the standard questions that you often see in a demo environment, for example.
And so what we're going to do now is we're going to show the audience the two different responses that two different AI companies, LLMs, produced as a response for this. And what we're going to do, have the crowd do, we're going to take a look and we're going to ask you, which one do you think sounds more human? Which one sounds less like AI? Because even though AI is sort of in its infancy, let's call it, handling sort of basic responses and presenting them mostly grammatically correct, free of spelling errors, I found it to be pretty reliable. But when you're hosting a guest at your place, it's more than just that, right? It's supposed to be a human experience, especially when it's one-to-one communication, like this example is. So why don't we go ahead, Assad, you can go to the next slide. And I'm going to let you all read each one, give you a little bit of time here. And I'm going to launch a poll, which you should be able to see on your screen. And tell me, in your opinion, which one sounds more human?
We can go ahead and read this here. Ben, would you like to do the honors?
Congratulations on your upcoming wedding. Regarding the hot tub at Octopus Cottage, it is indeed located in your private backyard, ensuring exclusive access to your stay during your stay. It's perfect for a relaxing and romantic honeymoon. The yard is also private, offering you serene space to celebrate. I'm delighted the cottage's color scheme matches your wife-to-be's favorite color. If you need more information, feel free to reach out. Looking forward to possibly hosting you for this special occasion. Why don't you go ahead and do the B there, Kyle?
Sure. Hi, congratulations on your upcoming wedding. That's not a silly question at all. Yes, the hot tub is located in your own private yard at the rental property, so you'll have exclusive access to it during your stay. It sounds like our place will be the perfect spot for your little honeymoon getaway, especially if your wife-to-be loves the color. If you have any more questions or if there's anything else I can help you with, just let me know. Donna.
Cool. So yeah, so I see the responses coming in here. I'll give it a little bit more just to let everyone to get their response in. But when we're talking about things like which sounds more human, I mean, it is subjective, right? It's very intuitive. But I think what you'll find, and I will go ahead and release the results of the poll here. B was considered the most human by this poll. Also, when we did a similar exercise, in fact, we did the exact same exercise at Hostchella Live, and B was the answer. Kyle, which do you think sounds more human?
I think it's definitely B, but there are merits to both that we can get into here, and we were so confident that the audience would also find it to be B that Assad, you can click forward one.
There we go. There we go.
We did decide to put that check mark there preemptively. And if we were wrong about this, we would eat crow here, but it looks like the audience is agreeing with us. Although again, let's move on, because I'm really glad we have Ben, that you're here, Ben, because you are our resident writing guru, right? I mean, you manage a team of writers. You are doing Hostway's content. I think everything that I've read from you has been incredibly compelling, and so yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background in copy writing, and then what your breakdown is of this.
So my first job right out of college, I worked at Lululemon's call center, and part of that was answering phone calls, but also a big part of it was answering emails. And in terms of sort of quality assurance for those emails, we always wanted it to feel like a human experience, right? You want to make that connection, especially in retail, and Lululemon's brand was very much about the sort of one-to-one contact. And so not only was I graded on my ability to make a transactional email sound personable, I also became the grader on that. So, going back to what I said just a couple minutes ago about how there's sort of an intuitive sense of what makes something sound human. But then when you dig into it a little bit more, I think you can actually, I asked myself, it's like, well, why did that one seem more human? Also, I just want to call out Laura in the chat said that B sounds more human, but that you liked A better. If you want to elaborate on that in the chat, I'd love to hear more because I think that really speaks to just the personal preference side of things. But anyway, if we go to the next slide, Assad, what I'm going to do is I'll sort of break down what I saw as making the response A less human, and then in so doing, I'm hoping to give you a bit more, just some food for thought when it comes to writing and writing copy, because like Kyle mentioned, I manage a team that writes blogs all the time, and so I have to give feedback on this quite frequently. So the first thing that I highlighted there, you see in the orange text where it says, it is indeed located in your private backyard, ensuring exclusive access during your stay. My advice is always write like you speak. Yes, it's professional. Yes, it's not a buddy. So you're not going to speak in slang. But I also don't know if I'd ever say to someone out loud, it is indeed located in your private backyard, ensuring exclusive access during your stay. To me, that can be simplified and put into a little bit more of a smooth, sort of free flowing way, which the other response does. The other thing that I want to call out here, this is a bit more maybe of a pet peeve for me, but it's perfect for a relaxing and romantic honeymoon. To me, that strikes me as a marketing speak. It kind of like says nothing, and then it uses big sounding words to actually say nothing. I think you could probably just take this sentence out, to be honest. But regardless, I would just say marketing speak, when you put it on a listing description, that makes a bit more sense because, you're one to many in your communication. But if you're one to one, don't use, commercial words, don't use marketing jargon. I just think that betrays a bit of the sort of intimate experience, if you will. I'll also call out serene. So that's the other thing, offering you a serene space. Use simple language. Serene might impress someone, but we're not playing Scrabble here. So, use words like calm, calm, comfortable. That works much better than serene. And then the other thing with avoiding clunky sentences, when I had to read this sentence out just now, but then also at Hostchella, it is when you read it out loud, when you see it, when you kind of read it, your eyes go, okay, I understand, what they're trying to say here. If you read that thing out loud, it is very clunky. So just good practice in any writing. Read your writing out loud because you'll be able to uncover some pretty clunky wording or syntax there that you can avoid. Go to the next slide, Assad. We'll move.
I bet the audience wasn't expecting a tutorial in this as well on
Yeah, I feel
writing proper writing.
on my high horse here.
No, it's incredibly valuable though, and it will help you as hosts to evaluate the quality of the AI, whichever direction you go, whichever system you're using.
And so what I liked about the second response, I love the way that they acknowledge the feeling. So, the AI model is going to be trained to repeat back, everything that was in the original inquiry. But the way that response A did it was regarding your this one is actually acknowledging the feeling that the guest put forward, which was, I know this might be a silly question. So I love that. I think that's very personable. The sort of write like you speak, I already talked about that, but this example of B, I think this accomplishes the exact same thing that the first one did, but just in a more casual way, I suppose. And just at the end, in terms of clunky language, I think it's just more of a natural way to do it. I really love the feedback we're getting in the chat here around, like, I'm seeing B sounds more human, but I like A better, rental property, and B was a big turnoff. Laura, you said that A sounded more professional, and I think that's a It's a wonderful, and this is probably for a different webinar. I know we're running a little short on time here, but a wonderful example of the subjectivity of what different guests would expect as in terms of professional. Sometimes it's cultural. You're not always communicating with native English speakers too, right? I'm coming at it from very much like I grew up speaking English. I grew up in marketing. This is kind of what I would expect. Age matters too. I would say generally, if you're hosting a demographic that's a bit younger, then it's okay with casual language. Whereas some people actually might get turned off like that. And I just to put one last point on it, you know, I'm not advocating for slang. I'm not advocating for buddy language. But in my opinion, writing that comes across very stiff does not accomplish the sort of the goal of connecting with your guest, and that there's always a way to sort of loosen up the language and make it a bit better. So, and at the end of the day, clarity does matter more than feeling, if you will. You know, putting forward your idea clearly and clarity. If you have to use sort of big words to do it, that's fine. I would argue that you don't need to, but whatever. Clarity matters. Clarity trumps all. So that was my little spiel there. Why don't we go to the next slide, Assad? So Kyle, so if for everyone to know, Kyle put together an essay that was sort of giving out his vision for AI, specifically autonomous AI, in the property management space. And there were three pillars he highlighted, and I'll turn it over to you, Kyle, to go over the three pillars.
Sure. So thank you, Ben. And it was an internal thing, so you didn't miss it as a LinkedIn post. But really, the first one that's important is what we've been talking about this whole time. AI needs to sound like it's coming from a human, if that's the approach you want to take. Short-term rentals have this advantage over hoteliers or other forms of lodging, in that it's a more boutique experience, right? And that's what people are coming to an Airbnb for, is also the connection and the culture that surrounds the platform. So having having that connection still present in communication at scale is very difficult. And if you're using AI to do it, I think the goal is ultimately for it to feel like they are still communicating with a human. Now, that's not the approach everybody has to take. You can always acknowledge that it's an AI bot, and nobody's going to fault you for not being able to respond at 2 o'clock in the morning. So if you go that route, even just acknowledging it, that will give you more leeway in the imperfections of what the responses might be. But ultimately, for fully autonomous AI, I think the number one thing is that it needs to pass the so-called Turing test, which was a test proposed by Alan Turing in 1950 as basically like the evaluation of whether or not we had actually achieved computer intelligence, whether or not a human interacting with said computer would not be able to tell that computer from a human. And I don't think we're there yet. I think that there's still, if you were approaching it from a skeptical lens, you can still find those imperfections, and we highlighted a few in those messages. Now, the large language models, the models from like OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Anthropic, which has Claude, are getting much better. But this is still something that's a work in progress. I think this is the one we're closest to. So now we can go along to number 2 here. So if you want to move that forward. Perfect. So the AI must know when to escalate problems to a human manager. I think this is the most important one, just from a safety perspective. So making sure that the AI knows when to bring in a human when it can't solve the problem. This can sometimes be a matter of of health or something more serious that you absolutely are going to need to take action on. If there's a fire, if there's any sort of physical trouble that messaging is not going to solve, somebody needs to be alerted right away. And there are often cases like this where it might just slip through the cracks, and you just can't allow that to happen if you're giving the AI full autonomy to respond. There are companies that are working on ways to figure out how this escalation happens, what the scenarios are for it, and I think a lot of progress is being made in the property management space on this. And so then we can move on to our last one here, which is that topic of hallucinations. So just for anyone who isn't aware or familiar with this term, AI um, is very good at giving you credible sounding responses that are complete fiction. AI has been trained on a lot of data, a lot of different conversations, and so it'll sometimes string together things that sound perfect, but it's actually making it up. I've seen hallucinations happen in drafts where um, a guest was asking for a florist, and I didn't have any examples of florists in my guidebooks or in my listing description, of course, and so it gave three different florists within like 4 miles of my property, and none of them exist. So if that had gone out to a guest, there would have been a whole lot of confusion and driving around looking for these fictional florists or, searching on Google and I had to search too. I mean, I was just like, really, are these places that are around here? No, they aren't. So making sure that those hallucinations are eliminated is that last step to making sure that the AI doesn't end up negatively impacting guest experience, which is costing us money and would be a problem for our businesses. These are the three things that really need to be solved before we can get to that future that we'd all love to see of being able to only have to step in occasionally. Um, Sam Altman of OpenAI. I'm stealing this from Ben from a conversation we had. I think he talks a lot about having the first company that is worth $1 billion, but is run by one person, and I think AI is going to make this possible. I hesitate to give any sort of a timeline on that, but it's definitely the space to watch, and if you aren't following along with this, along with the technology, you may find yourself falling way behind, as the problems are solved, and they will be solved by these companies, and property management will be riding that wave.
And speaking of a company that has AI embedded into their platform and is only going to be doing more of it, Saad, why don't you go to the next slide? And Kyle, why don't you give me your little pitch here for all the great features we have?
In terms of our embedded AI features, we are making strides internally on this. Right now, there's stuff you can already test out if you wanna dip your toes in the water if you haven't already. First one is being able to generate guest message responses automatically. So we have a model that's been trained internally. It knows your listing's description, amenities, location, and it also can see the past conversation history in that thread. So it's able to respond or generate a response that you can then just approve with the click of a button. I know I've used this with messages where you just need to send something out quickly, and I mean it's a real time saver. And you have this on the app as well. So when you're on the go, this should be your best friend. Next up is also being able to write listing descriptions. So consider it a first draft on your copy when you need to do this, especially if you've got a lot of listings coming online at the same time. This is a huge time saver. So generating listing descriptions based on the amenities and the other the location of the property, that type of thing. This is actually something that you're seeing more and more in the real estate in general. But this is something that we wanted to have right away, and yeah, we'd love to hear any feedback as you guys check it out.
Plenty more coming on that in the upcoming year. It's a huge focus for us, so really excited. I've gotten a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, and there's going to be some really, really great stuff. I know we're at time, but I think we've got enough time to squeeze in two questions here from the crowd. Kyle, Hannah asked, I would love to hear about AI and potential automated responses, or if we can teach AI to respond to common issues like access to property or pool codes.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and these are the types of things that um, can be solved for now to to a pretty wide extent, and I would recommend I've had the chance to check out, several options personally. I would say go to the Hostaway marketplace, and take a look at our AI integration partners. A lot of them take a demo, right? They're all run by really smart people who have developed something really special. So I would say, go check out a few different options, and you'll see that a lot of them have those, knowledge bases that can be modified with things like pool codes and the rest.
Next question from Matthew. This was in response or in regards to the little exercise we did before. Question was this a Chat GPT generated response within Hostaway? And is the AI able to scan the actual listing amenities and photos to generate these responses?
The photos no, to answer your first question, no, these were generated by external tools. They again, have all I'm sure received updates, since then, so I don't wanna, call either one of them out. And so that's, that would be the first thing. And then the second, in terms of what we train on, we don't have computer vision enabled for listings right now. I think this is something that down the line I can see is not only being useful for being able to give better responses, but also to be able to coach, you as property managers on what optimal photo arrangement and photo quality would look like, right? It all goes back to a more holistic approach to making sure that listings are optimized to be, as competitive as possible and as compelling, and as likely as possible to be, clicked on when somebody is using Airbnb or Vrbo.
Okay, let's squeeze in one last question. I know we're over time, but we've got some attendees still hanging on. So, question from Kathy. Kyle, do you have any tips on best practices to train AI responses?
To train them. Um, there's a lot that can be tweaked in terms of tone with most of the systems, including ours, for the types of response you want, whether you want it to be shorter and longer. And there are some challenges there. AI tends to well, and I'd say especially with Chat GPT's model, it tends to say too much. Brevity is not at the core of what AI wants to do. So you might get something that is very thorough, but again, just doesn't sound human because of it. And where a simple yes or no would do, it's giving you, the next great American novel. So I would say that in terms of training AI, if it's a model that allows for you to give feedback, that's really where you're gonna wanna be right now. And eventually, I'd like to see models that are training based on the corrections, and the edits that you make to what they've generated, so that eventually you can take the training wheels off and go full auto.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for asking your questions. We're gonna have plenty more exciting things regarding AI coming out in the next year, so stay tuned to that. And also, next webinar in December, we are having our very special yearly STR predictions webinar. So we're bringing on Marcus and three other experts from the industry to come and give their predictions for what's going to come up in 2025 in the short-term rental space. So once again, thank you for everyone for joining. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Assad, for driving the deck in the background. And we'll see you soon. Appreciate you, everyone.
See you guys. Thanks so much.